Alright, so we're here to review the Onision documentary Part 2. Part 1 was bad, and I think Part 2 was worse. Why? I don't know, let me count the ways. First of all, Eugenia was in it, and I don't just mean they took clips from her without her permission, I mean she was in it. She was interviewed and was a part of it, and now as a result has yet another platform helping her advocate the story that everything is fine now. Everything is fine. So thanks a lot, Discovery, for that message. Really good. Way to go. And the second thing, and honestly this is the worst part of the entire thing, is that all the girls' stories that were promised not to be told, shocker, they were told. I remember my last video calling this into question and thinking it was strange because in my mind I was like, how are they gonna tell the Onision story without telling the story? Which involves the way he treated other people, and in particular the story focuses on the young girls. So if they didn't want their story told and Discovery supposedly said they weren't going to do that and respect their wishes, I was like, oh man, how's that gonna make sense? How are they gonna tell the story without? But I guess they won't. We'll see what happens in Part 2. Well, I saw. I was not happy, but I saw. They very much told all of the stories. So again, way to go, Discovery. Big fail on you for not respecting the wishes of the people who are actually involved, the people who are actually hurt, the people who you self-admittedly are doing this to advocate for. Really nice. You aren't doing some kind of humanitarian effort. You have it on Discovery Plus behind a paywall. You're not fooling anyone. This rabbit hole goes pretty deep. I actually dug into this more than I thought I was going to. I wanted to just make a quick response to Part 2, but the more things I learned, the more things I saw, the more I felt like, okay, this is actually gonna be kind of a detailed, long video, so I hope you guys have your popcorn. I hope you're ready for the ride because this is going to be a long one. But first, I do want to say thank you so much to ExpressVPN for sponsoring this video. If you're like me, stuck in quarantine, running out of shows to binge, it's really helpful to be able to use a VPN to change your location and access shows on streaming sites that might not be available in your country. For example, if I change my location here, I can go and watch one of my favorite shows, Rick and Morty. This is pretty priceless. And that is a huge perk, but my biggest thing right now is privacy on the internet, and that is something we should not be taking for granted, especially right now whenever more people are spending time at home on their computers. Every day without knowing it, you are giving your ISP information about the websites you visit. Seriously not okay with me, especially since they can legally sell your browsing history to ad companies, and also keep in mind, incognito does not change a thing. So if you use ExpressVPN, you can protect yourself from all of that and from things like hackers. So make sure you go to expressvpn.com/Jaclyn, Jaclyn, to find out how you can get 3 months for free. It is the top rated VPN provider for a reason. It is the most trusted, and I personally do love using it. All you gotta do is click the button, choose where you would like to connect to, and then bam, you are protected. So make sure you go to expressvpn.com/Jaclyn, check it out. I've got a link in the description below. Don't let people be creeping on your stuff, because who knows, the next documentary might be about you, and the person creeping might be Discovery Plus because they don't care. He really prides himself on being an honest person. He uses this as sort of a shield against anything that he says that comes off as being a dick.
So in case you don't know who Onision is.
Okay. Few things about this. First of all, yes, I know I look like shit. It's a very old video, so let's just not talk about that. Let's talk about how Discovery Plus did use that clip. They didn't ask me, they didn't ask Blair, they didn't ask Blair in the last Part 1 where they used a clip from her too. It is interesting to me because I'm sure they bought Chris Hansen's interviews but just ripped all these YouTube videos. It's fine. So that's my justification for using all of their clips in this video, and they better not complain about it because they did the same thing. Girl, you doing the same thing. Also, I would like to mention that this video is from 2016, and if I do recall correctly, in Part 1, they did make it seem like everyone loved Onision until Chris Hansen came along, you know, to save the day.
It wasn't until Chris Hansen's YouTube story that the overall dialogue started to change.
What?
So interesting how they find all these clips from YouTubers saying literally the same exact thing back in 2016, and here we are in 2021, and Discovery's like, thank you, Chris Hansen, for being the first. You're a pioneer.
That's annoying.
I genuinely was surprised, and at this point I'd like to think that I've seen so many things go wrong on the internet that nothing would surprise me anymore, But I was surprised. I did not think they would actually tell the stories of these girls after hearing time and time again that that's not what they were gonna do. I remember watching it for the first time, and by the way, I kind of just filmed my TV as I was watching it, so I hope that that's okay for you, because I do want to pull relevant clips here and there just to show you what I'm exactly talking about. But I remember seeing this and being just so confused, like, wait, I thought, am I missing something? Did they actually say they were gonna tell the stories, but in a certain way that somehow these girls approved of? I thought I was losing my mind for a second. So I went to Twitter, as any rational person would do, and I said, someone please clear this up for me. I was under the impression that Discovery Plus would not be even telling the stories of the girls who did not want to be involved. I thought that they wouldn't be in the documentary and that they would not have their story be a part of it either. No? Well, it turns out I was not losing my mind. That is what they communicated, and they just didn't follow through. I'm going to now move on from one incredibly controversial topic to another. Eugenia. Well, at least it says struggles instead of struggled. At least they're referring to it in the present tense.
Since I was pretty young, I've always been like pretty naturally skinny. But sometimes I think like I wasn't really properly taking care of myself.
So the naturally skinny thing needs to just stop. Like, no one is saying that that's an issue if you're naturally skinny. This is clearly something else. Also saying I wasn't really properly taking care of myself is a little bit of an understatement, and it's also kind of making it seem like I wasn't before, but now I am.
He would receive backlash about it. He would stop for a couple months or a couple weeks, then he'd get back to doing it again.
Yes, he did receive a lot of backlash for it, and a lot of that was from me, and it got so intense that we actually reached an agreement to have some kind of a weird debate, and I have to put that in quotes because it was so frustrating, just talking over me and just the weirdest deflections.
My point is that it's very hard for anyone to take that kind of thing seriously whenever you're being
That's fine.
kind of horrible.
Some people can't accept that I'm a person with a sense of humor, a dark sense of humor.
I'm talking about Eugenia, a specific person who you have made countless videos. You say that you care about her, and then you make fun of her and pretend to puke in a toilet. And I find those two things too different, not funny, and very hypocritical.
It was so hard for me to rewatch this because it was so incredibly frustrating. He was trying to make the argument that even though he makes these videos pretending to eat and dropping food and pretending to throw up in a toilet, that it didn't mean that he didn't care about her, and that he could strongly care about her but still pretend to be her and make fun of her in such a disgusting way. And then would use examples like this, and this is not the first time he did this whenever I show this clip, and you can just see me reaching such a peak of frustration.
So if you're someone's brother and you laugh at them when they trip and they fall down, that means you don't love them. That's what you're saying. You're saying if you make fun of someone, you can't care about them. That's literally what you just said. Your point.
But then we finally got to a point where he promised to stop doing what he was doing so long as she simply emailed him.
Eugenia Cooney, if you see this ever or hear about this ever, just write me an email and say, please stop, and I'll never make a video about you again.
You
but
promise?
I haven't.
You promise?
Yeah.
If Eugenia says, Onision, I don't want you to talk about me anymore, you would for real though this time not do it anymore.
Yeah. I'll promise.
And not just saying it, you would actually stop, because you said it a few times and then.
Well, I said that there was a video that was my final video. All anyone has to do if they have a problem, like with the content I make, and they're a part of it, is just to ask.
Well, there you heard it, guys. If he ever makes a video about you that you don't like, just ask him to stop, and he'll totally respect that. But what I find very frustrating is that this documentary is trying to paint him as some kind of a villain for the way that he treated her, but they left out the worst thing he could have ever done. It was very difficult to get her to kind of hang out in groups. It seemed like there were always things that would pop up to prevent her from spending time with people. So we wanted to try to get together to have this intervention, and Onision would not stop making videos, would not stop making content, would not stop harassing her. And then she would kind of be quiet and pull away and not talk to people as much. And I remember eventually reaching a point where because we were getting close to doing something, I reached out to him and I said, please, just this once, can you please, we're doing something, I'm working on something, and I really need for you to not interfere with that. You could really mess this up in a big way, and I need for this to go smoothly. And was he willing to be helpful? No, not at all. He had for so long harassed me, along with a lot of people, by the way, for not doing anything. Why don't you do anything? Why aren't you doing anything? He could have ruined that entire thing, and he still claims to be the person who cares so much. Now he goes back and says, oh, it was the right thing that you did, but he could have messed it up. So honestly, of all the shitty things he's done, it's really hard for me to think of something more hurtful than that.
A lot of this was a big part of why I stepped away from the internet and did go and get help.
Yeah, I'm just gonna let that one pass.
I'm definitely doing a lot better now.
I don't have to ever make a video about her ever again.
There it is, the I'm doing a lot better now narrative. So thank you, Discovery Plus. Thank you for that. Let's close the chapter on that and move on to Edwin. Now, Edwin has said many times over that the reason he was in the documentary was because he thought that it needed a YouTuber. I might disagree with that, and I'll say more on that later, but also he in some way thought he was, I think, vetting the process to make sure that the stories of these girls would remain confidential and would not be told.
In August, I stood firmly against this documentary because I was under the impression that it was going to be telling the stories of Sarah, Billy, or other people that did not consent to it because that's what they were saying. Right?
So he stood firmly against the documentary because he thought it was going to do the very thing that it ended up doing, which means they clearly lied to him and anybody else they told they weren't going to do that.
Repzilla did a live stream talking about how they were pitching to him, like they had approached him and saying that, hey, if you want to be on it, we guarantee you that the victim stories will not be told.
Oh, oops. They certainly went and did that. I don't know if they think that this is some kind of loophole, but instead of saying her name, they say so-and-so's friend. They blur out her face in different videos that she's in. I don't know. None of that really cuts it for me. They're still telling the story.
This girl was 14 years old. Kai at this point went as a female, and she lured this young girl in, started to flirt with her, send her pictures.
I am a little confused as to why Shiloh is telling this story. I thought that she had like this circle of girls that they were all together and like relating to each other in, and I would have just assumed that Shiloh would know that these girls don't want their stories told. Am I missing something? I feel like I'm going crazy again, like in my tweet, but here she is telling the story. Like, that's okay.
I did my best to talk about how Chris Hansen took advantage of people and just was generally kind of a piece of shit. I've only seen episode 1.
Well, it's also
but
like,
I've been guaranteed they're gonna air the part where I give some real commentary on Chris Hansen, okay?
I can tell Edwin really believes this. He really believes that because he sat and told Discovery Plus criticisms of Chris Hansen, that equaled it will be included in the show. Maybe part 3 will blow my mind, but I'm kind of doubting they're ever going to include any criticisms of Chris Hansen, especially seeing how much they glorified him in part 1.
Anyways, I vetted them thoroughly, and they are not using victims as stories without consent. Lastly, they will include my rant on Chris Hansen.
They don't have consent. They very much use the stories, and I'm pretty sure they're not going to use any of your rant on Chris Hansen. Also, I don't really know what vetted them thoroughly means. Like, what do you mean when you say that? I mean, is there a contract? Did you get something in writing? I saw somebody leave in a comment on my Twitter that he got something in writing. If you did, I would blast that shit all over the internet right about now. Personally, I would never have gone into something like this without having it in writing, without having some kind of a contract, or without letting them let me film it too. And I have done this before in interviews. Ever since my Jesse Lee Peterson interaction where they edited it to shit, even though it still made him look bad, they edited that a lot. I will never do another interview unless they let me audio record it myself, so that if they do take out of context in any way, I have the full original audio file or video file, whatever you prefer. But if he had done that, if they had allowed that, then at least he would be able to produce that and see, I said these things. They clearly right here in writing said they would use it. Now we have a whole story on Discovery Plus and how they're totally full of shit, which we already kind of have that story, but that would sweeten the pot.
She was about 16, and she was in that house with them for quite some time.
I really don't understand. I don't understand how Shiloh feels like she can tell this story. How this Steven guy can sit there and give commentary with her face blurred out. Ugh. Yeah, I just don't like watching this. It really rubs me the wrong way that a major television network did not get consent to tell these stories and then perpetuated the idea among people who were trying to defend them that, don't worry, we're not going to do that, and then just go ahead and do it.
And like a worst case scenario is like, make sure that they tell you this is not what's going to happen, so you have it on record. So this is like not a bad thing. Like, Edwin's done his research. He's vetted all of this. Like, this is not like, I think it'll be okay.
What do you mean? What research? What do you mean vetted? Like, ask them, hey, are you going to do this? And they're like, nope, don't worry, we're not going to do it. Is that it? Is that the extent of it? Did you really just trust them? Is there something you can show? Because at this point, it all just seems very sketchy to me. Like, there is a responsibility on you if you're going to put your face on something like this to actually have something more concrete than their word. And if that thing exists, which I really hope it does, it would be really handy for you to pull that card right about now.
You know, all I can say about the first episode is, yeah, it's not that bad. It's casual viewing. It's not gonna blow your mind, but I don't think it's terrible.
I'm not gonna lie, this is a little confusing to me because he did say that he had a huge problem with Chris Hansen, that he didn't want Chris Hansen to be made out to be some kind of hero, but that episode 1 was good? Because that's all episode 1 did.
If I wasn't on it, Chris Hansen gets to look like a fucking hero, and he's not a hero.
It wasn't until Chris Hansen's YouTube story.
I'm not in it that much in episode 1, so once I'm in it more, it'll probably get better anyways.
It didn't get better in episode 2, but to be fair, you weren't in it very much, and I can hold out a string of hope that maybe episode 3 does have more of you in it that's actually content where you're saying something negative about Chris Hansen, but I'm not gonna hold my breath.
It could be argued that my appearance could add exposure to the documentary. I mean, I would hate to make that argument because it sounds arrogant, but still, you know, maybe some people are like, oh, Edwin's in it. Maybe it's not so bad. I don't know.
This is the reason why you being in it is a problem. This is why. Because there are people that are fans of you, that trust you, that are now going to give more respect and be more willing to listen to the things in this documentary, many of which are untrue, and now obviously are not respecting the wishes of the people who are actually involved. I don't think any YouTuber should have been a part of this for that very reason. Nobody trusted them. We all had a feeling this was going to happen, and it did. So if you're going to be a part of something without a guarantee in paper contract you can sue them for, you gotta be more careful, man. Like, I'm not trying to shit on him too much because I do think he fully believed them that they weren't going to do this, but they did. So from now on, and just a message to anybody who is a part of anything, make sure you have contracts and signatures and guarantees that people aren't going to screw you over or manipulate through your words. At least record your own conversation so you can prove it when they lie. You're giving them permission to film you. You should get permission to film them, and if they're not willing to do it, it's not a deal. At least that's how I have had to roll through previous interviews and things like this, and that's just my word of advice to anybody out there so something like this doesn't happen to you.
Once one girl spoke up about her story, like, some people within the community, they saw like, wow, she finally did it.
You would be like,
Once one girl spoke out about her story? What girl? What one girl? What commentary are you trying to add to right now? Do you know that there's going to be a narrative about the one girl or the other girls that spoke out? Because I thought you were trying to prevent this story from coming out. But if you're going to discuss it at all with people who are filming you, wouldn't that make you kind of wonder if they're going to tell that story? It would for me. And like I said, I get it. I know it's probably hard to tell the Onision story without talking about these girls, but that's what was promised. That's what you told us was promised. So why are you sitting there talking about the girl that told her story? It shouldn't be brought up ever. But of course they're going to be told because Chris Hansen sold his interviews to Discovery Plus and they just blurred out the faces because that makes it okay. And then near the end this thing pops up that says between 2011 and 2019 up to a dozen women visit them and create videos for Greg's YouTube channel. Some of the women are professional YouTubers, others are fans. Great. Well, I was one of those women. I was one of the YouTubers that Greg flew out to go make videos with him. I flew out with Nadine and Damien and we made a bunch of videos. The first thing Greg said to me whenever I showed up at the airport was how like I was tall, but he said it in like a grossed out way, which in retrospect is really weird. Like, why would you need to say that to a stranger that you have, you know, no intention on being creepy to? He's tweeted about me in the past about how I'm gross because I'm 5'9", like, it's just very strange to me. The first thing upon arrival, he's like, oh, you're tall, like, as though it's like ew, gross. It's icky, as Katie Morton would say. But in all honesty, the trip was fine. I remember it being kind of fun at times, and then being really confused as to why, like, as soon as I started dating someone, which was pretty soon after that, he just threw a shit fit about it and cut me out of his life along with everybody else and made a big deal. And there began the story of me and him fighting each other perpetually on the internet, and him criticizing my body and him criticizing my decisions and saying horrible things and being really just too involved with my personal life to a weird, creepy degree. But I digress. I want to come back to the main thing. I do think it's just so messed up that they told the stories of these girls. I'm in shock that they did that. I truly think that they told Edwin, they told probably multiple people that, hey, rest assured, we're not gonna do this thing, but like I said, I'm gonna double, triple down on this. Never trust anybody's word on anything. Get it in a contract, get it in writing. Otherwise, it's totally useless, and just expect people to lie to you. We're in a shitty world of people who are very much out for themselves, and to say their ethics are questionable at this point is kind of an understatement. So with that, I would love to know what you guys think. Leave a comment in the comment section below. Are you mad at Discovery? What issues do you have with it? What are your predictions for part 3? Do you want me to do a response on part 3? Do you think that maybe finally Edwin will get to say his piece on how shitty Chris Hansen is? Maybe they'll surprise me, but that sounds quite a lot like what I said in my last video whenever I said they're probably not going to tell the stories of those girls, right? We'll see. Anyway, I'm gonna stop talking now. This has been a very long video. I thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, give it a thumbs up. Like I said, please leave a comment. I am so curious to hear your thoughts. And if you have not already subscribed, please click that subscribe button and the little bell to keep up with me and all the videos that I'm posting. Also, big thank you to those of you who are following me on other platforms like Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. I'm also going to be streaming a lot more on Twitch, so make sure you follow me there. All of my social media links and everywhere you can follow me are going to be linked in the description below. Check it out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you later. Cheers!